Cycles X. Back in April, our jaws collectively dropped as we watched the demonstration for Cycles X being shown. But what is Cycles X and how is it a big step forward for Blender? Well, to put it simply, the thing that I think everyone knows is it's basically a collection of performance improvements for the Cycles rendering engine. So let's start with that, performance. One thing you're immediately going to see when using Cycles X in Blender 3.0, which should be coming at the beginning of December, is it's favoring more of a progressive rendering approach rather than a tile-based system. So instead of having these kind of ugly blocks that are going to be rendering out your frame, you're going to be having the entire frame rendered at the same time. And you might think, oh, well, if progressive rendering is so good, then why didn't it always do this? And it's because, well, depending on the algorithms and the scenes being rendered, the tile-based system can be a lot faster than progressive rendering. And that's the case for current versions of Blender, but that won't be the case for the Cycles X versions coming later. Now, you could always enable progressive rendering in Blender, but it was slower, so there wasn't really any point in doing that. That is, of course, unless you didn't really care about the rendering time and you just wanted to see the frame develop over time. For example, one good thing you can do with progressive rendering is you can put it on with an indefinite number of samples, go on holiday, come back, and you have just the perfect, crystal clear, pristine frame of your scene. You can also stop it at any point during the render and you will always have a complete frame, regardless of how noisy it is. The problem with having a tiled system is that if you stopped it early, you would have these blocks of just no pixels whatsoever. So I think with the added speed and the progressive rendering, it's going to be more fun for people to preview their scenes. And this kind of comes onto the viewport rendering, because with these improved algorithms and such, viewport rendering is going to be a lot more responsive and a lot more fun to engage with. So just to give you a demonstration, I've got the same blend file here open in two different versions of Blender, my current version and the Cycles X experimental branch. And you can see that as I'm moving this placeholder table object around, in the old version, other than the outline, we can't really see it in the actual frame. It's just way too noisy. But in the new version, you can definitely see the object as I'm moving it around. So this is great for real-time previews and rapidly prototyping different aspects of your scene. Now, when they originally announced Cycles X, they showed the performance improvements through the use of graphs. So, it has to be true, showing that you can get up to 7 times better performance in certain scenes. But then people were allowed to play with the experimental branch, so then they could test it for themselves. So I'm going to show these graphs on the screen. Well, you can see them, I can't see them. I've got something very different on my screen. But that's just an excellent performance improvement, much more than I think people would have expected. So yeah, I think this is going to make people very happy. But let's talk about future-proofing. So one of the things they said they wanted to do was improve the architecture for future development. And I imagine what this means is probably going back a little bit and rewriting things to make it easier to develop more features for Cycles in the future. If you've ever worked on a large software project in the past, you know the feature creep combined with software that isn't really made to be future-proof from the beginning can produce some really bad results and make it just extremely difficult to make things for it in the future. And we see this a lot in other fields as well, especially with the video game industry, where shortcuts are made just to make a minimum viable functional product. But then as you try to add new features on top of that, you're basically adding new features on top of shortcuts, and it becomes a very hacky solution. And that works to a certain degree, but then it's diminishing returns as the project grows. Then as you try to add new features on top of those hacky solutions, you end up with a bunch of weird errors and anomalies that you don't really understand. They're very hard to track down exactly where they come from, and it just becomes a buggy mess. This is made much more complex if you keep in mind that different aspects of the project are made by different people. So if you don't have unified code practices, or you don't have great communication between these, or they're made at very different points in time with reliabilities on different modules and stuff, then the whole thing becomes a mess. So with the whole video game idea, I'm not going to name any names, Fallout, Elite Dangerous, but if you've ever stopped to think, oh wow, how can these professional companies and professional people who've been paid all this money and spent all this time being educated how to make these things, how can I make such a buggy mess? Well, the reason is because software development is very difficult and very complex. To try and describe it a better way, it's probably like trying to squeeze ketchup out of a ketchup bottle. You know how it makes that kind of really depressive fart noise, like pfft, like when nothing's coming out? Now imagine you're a software developer that spent 5 years and $50,000 getting like a computer science degree, just trying to figure out how to operate this bottle. But no matter how much you squeeze and you think you've got the perfect squeezing technique down, but nothing's coming out. The squeezing technique in this case could be like the perfect code that you've been refining over years and years, but you kind of just start to realize that it's not really your fault because all the people that have come before you have kind of squeezed out all the sauce, and like it's kind of been scattered around the bottle in a very weird way. So now that when you're coming to do it, you're not really getting anything good. So you need to try and like clear out and move the sauce around and try and get the good center of mass. So when you do finally get your squeeze, you're actually going to get something out. And just as Todd comes through the door, you finally manage to figure it out, and then you get all the sauce coming, and it's a momentous occasion, and Todd's happy, and suddenly the whole world can rejoice in your success. I think that's probably what it's like. So remember everyone, if you do see a Blender developer in real life, remember to thank them for giving you the good sauce. And it's at this point I hope that none of them are watching this video. So how can you keep up to date on the Cycles X project? Well, thank you for asking. If you go to developer.blender.org, that's where you can keep track of the different projects. On there you can find the Cycles project, and then you can keep track of all the different tasks, and there's even like a kind of workboard view. I think they call it like a Kanban system when it's laid out like that. But yeah, there's different tasks you can keep track of, and one in particular, I think you should check out is the Cycles X new features and changes, because there's a bit of a tick box on there where you see what's been done, and they keep that updated as well. So if you are interested in keeping your prying eyes on the development of these projects, then that's the website you should go to check that out. So to take a bit more of a boring step away, let's talk about some of the goals of the system. Some things they want to do is they want to remove the OpenCL rendering kernels because they're apparently a bit too difficult to maintain. To sum up what a kernel is, with my limited knowledge, a kernel is basically a container for the main kind of loops and routines that the rendering engine actually uses. I think it's supposed to be designed to be hyper efficient with regards for memory limitations and compatibility, because it's supposed to be used like all the time, like the main engine part of the rendering engine. Apparently they also want to remove branched path tracing. They want to focus more on adaptive sampling and light importance techniques. And they also want to remove NLM denoising by focusing more on AI denoising techniques, and in particular, open image denoise. So that should be coming with Blender 3.0 at the beginning of December, like I said in the last video, but remember, subject to change and delays as always. So what are my personal thoughts? Well, thanks for asking again. I think Blender has definitely made its name with Cycles and Eevee. Having a combination of the path tracing and rasterization engines is definitely something that I think is a bit standout. It's very good. I wish they could connect a bit more though. I think Cycles is way overdue for an upgrade, especially since we have products like eCycles in the community that have been here for quite a while, basically just demonstrating that Cycles could have been upgraded all this time, but just no one was bothered to do it for the actual Blender Foundation. I think upgrading Cycles now will also set a precedent that other areas of Blender that have been neglected for a while can also be upgraded, looking at Video Sequence Editor, looking at Compositor. Speaking about the compositor though, I really want that real-time compositing for Eevee. Anyway, I know what you're thinking. Curtis, did you really just make me watch an entire video about a rendering engine? Cringe. And to that I say, well no, I didn't make you. You clicked on my stupid face. So thanks for watching everyone. Make sure to do a little dance around the subscribe button and sign up to my Patreon to be forever blessed with productive ketchup squeezes. So thanks again, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.